How can you introduce yourself, Lenon Honor?
Yes, my name is Lenon Honor. I'm a husband and father, an author, a musician, a video producer, amongst other things. And most importantly, I'm a husband and father.
Oh, thank you so much for that. You've been doing great. Okay, guys, today I will be interviewing. His name is Lenon Honor. Now, he's one of the person who I turn to for relationship advice because all the other relationship I don't vibe with, because he have affected my life, and I would like to thank you for him because he affected me since I was the 23 from 2013, and he gave me a free ebook which I like to thank him for. Thank you so much, Lenon Honor. How are you doing today?
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm doing wonderful. Good to talk with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lenon. I would like to ask you, since so many people are so confused about relationship, how can we prepare for a positive male and female relationship?
Well, I think it starts with personal work, working on yourself as a man, or if you're a woman, work on yourself as a woman. And I like to look at it on 4 different levels. The first level is probably the most important level, and that's dealing with your mentality, how you feel about yourself as a man, how you feel about, or how you think about yourself as a man, how you think about women, and of course, how you think about male-female relationships. And a lot of people have negative views all the way across the board. It's difficult to establish and be prepared for a positive relationship if you have a negative mentality about yourself, about women, or about male-female relationships. The second level is emotions. You really have to refine your emotional state so that you can have more positive feelings about men, more positive feelings about women, more positive feelings about male-female relationships. And a lot of people have some very negative feelings associated with male-female relationships for obvious reasons. A lot of us, we've gone through traumatic experiences or hurt and pain and suffering while in relationships, and we carry those emotions forward. So part of what needs to take place for everyone is to go through a healing process so they can overcome the emotional pain and suffering that they've experienced in the past, and they can move forward to be prepared for a positive relationship. Third level is verbal preparation, and that simply means that we take the time to refine how we speak about relationships, also how we speak to women as men, how we speak to men as to men as women. Very important. A lot of people in relationships, not only do they speak poorly about relationships, but when they are in relationships, many people tend not to have appropriate communication. And so it's very important for us to refine our vocabulary and develop effective and efficient ways and loving ways to communicate with our partner. And then, of course, the fourth level, there's more, but I think that these are primarily the 4 most important ones. The fourth level is behavioral preparation. If you want to be prepared for a positive relationship, then you have to make sure that your behavior is in line with supporting a positive relationships. How you treat yourself, how you treat women, and then also how you behave once you are in a relationship. All these 4 areas are very important when we talk about preparing for a positive relationship.
Right. Thank you. I've been listening to your advice, and but I wholeheartedly use your advice because so many of the men out there, chasing a woman, and they're not really healing themselves, and they're doing the same thing to hurt like themselves and others, and they bring themselves with them. And I've seen it a lot with my friends where they don't take the time to heal themselves. And you said in one of your videos, say dating is a form for failure. And why would you say that?
Yes, because most people approach dating from the predatory standpoint. In point of fact, most men approach dating from a predatory standpoint. In other words, they're out on the prowl and they're trying to capture a woman. And what goes into this is a lot of subterfuge, or what we can call a misrepresentation. In other words, most people, men and women, when it comes to dating, they misrepresent themselves. They may go out on a date and they may dress a particular way. I've known men who they will rent a car, a really nice car, under the pretense, again, it's pretentious, it's manipulative, under the pretense that they own it, because they want the woman to believe that they have a lot of money. I've known women who, they've gone out of their way, simple stuff like they'll laugh at jokes that are not funny, that the male, he may tell a joke and she'll laugh, and it's not really funny, but she laughs because she wants him to like her. And he does things because he wants her to like him, but they're totally misrepresenting themselves. In other words, under normal circumstances, they wouldn't behave that way when they're interacting with the woman or with the man. But because it's in the context of the dating scene and it's predatory, well, then there has to be some sort of mechanism of manipulation in order to get the other person to want to be with you. And so the idea is for me, when I talk about it being a formula for failure, if it is so pretentious in the beginning, and there's a lot of manipulation in the beginning, a woman to dress a particular way that she doesn't normally dress, she may show extra cleavage, which she would normally not show. The man may have a stack of $1 bills, and then he wraps around that stack of $1 bills, $100 to $200 bills, and he takes it out and roll, and it makes it look like he has all these $100 of bills. I've known men who have done it. He may wear jewelry that's expensive or a chain. I've seen all of this. If the premise upon which these two people are interacting to establish a relationship is about misrepresentation, and if it's about a predatory type of orientation, in particular men preying upon women in the dating scene, what's the likelihood of them establishing a positive male-female relationship? And I would propose that under most circumstances, when it comes to dating, unless you get lucky, unless you're dealing with someone who is completely forthright and honest with you, and they're not misrepresenting themselves, and you're doing the same, unless that's the scenario that takes place, under most circumstances, dating leads to failure in male-female relationships.
Yes, I totally agree with that, because I listened to one of my friends, and she dated a lot of guys, not saying, but, and I was like, how, and she never find true love. And I was like, she felt love for the first time. I was like, whoa, that's, that's strange. And then I would like to ask, how can we attract, because I know you like to use mate a lot, because we don't use boyfriend and girlfriend. I know you use it a lot. And how can, because I'm into the law of attraction, but I'm trying to gear to the law of attraction in the right way, because they're trying to attract the object instead of working on themselves, like you said in the first. What can we do about that?
Yes, I think we have to be very careful about the terminology. In point of fact, what we talked about earlier about refining our vocabulary and the words that we use, also how we describe relationships and our need or desire to be in a relationship. When we use terms like even attraction is based upon someone within the context of relationships, men and women. It's based upon someone else's perception of you. They're either going to be attracted to you or they're not. So even the term attraction, we have to be very careful about that. The law of attraction, I think the terminology is not necessarily as precise as it needs to be. I like to use something, in my opinion, that's more precise, and I call it internal gravity. See, attraction deals mainly with, someone else, you wanting something else and something else somehow being attracted to you and coming to you, but it's really based upon that other thing. That other thing can or cannot. It can decide to or not to. So it leaves you with very little power. You can hope and you can dream and you can wish and you can pray, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to come to you. How many of us, we've said a law of attraction, I want to attract this into my life, and it doesn't come? Well, why is that the case? Because there's no internal work that has gone into it. In other words, I like to use gravity because gravity deals with what's taking place on the inside, the internal. The moon, as an example, is it attracted to the earth? No, it's not attracted to the earth. It has nothing to do with the law of attraction. It's stuck inside of the earth's gravity because there's something within the earth that compels the moon to circle within its field of gravity. You see, well, the same thing applies to human beings. Well, we can look at this even deeper. The sun is the earth and all of the planets in our solar system. Are they attracted to the sun because of the law of attraction? No, it has nothing to do with the law of attraction. It has to do with the internal gravity within the sun. You see why it's much more precise. We have to be very careful with the terminology. Well, the same thing applies to men and women. When we deal with internal gravity, there's something within the sun that compels the planets to gravitate around it. Well, the same thing applies to us as men or as women. What's inside of us compels things to gravitate around us. And if we work on ourselves, our internal character, who we are as men and women, our thoughts, our words, our actions, our emotions, we develop stronger and stronger and stronger internal gravity. And then that is what compels women to come into your gravity and circle around you. And see, it's not that they're attracted to you per se. They have no choice. The same thing for you women. You develop internal gravity. Men have no choice. They come into your field of gravity and they begin to circle around you. And see, the difference is with attraction, it's almost like you're hoping and you're waiting, but you're not doing any work. When we talk about internal gravity, it's about self-improvement and refining yourself. And you'll find that not only do you have options that begin to gravitate around you, but now you have options in terms of choosing which partner or which mate is most appropriate for you. So I think we have to be very careful about the terminology. It had nothing to do with the law of attraction, me and my wife coming together 16 years ago. We've been married to now for 4. It had to do with the fact that I was working on my internal character, and I was trying to work and refine myself as a young man at the age of 25. And she was doing the same. And circumstances occurred wherein her internal gravity and my internal gravity came close enough to where we were compelled to come closer to it. It had nothing to do with attraction. It had to do with the fact that we were both refining and working on ourselves, and we continue to do that to this day. And guess what? Because we continue to do this to this day, not only has our relationship continued to become more powerful, but the love that is present has become its own gravitational field. And therefore now we have children who now have come into our gravity, and they circle around us too. You see?
Yes.
Let me say one other thing. One of the reasons why I decided to do this interview with you is because I have a lot of respect for you, because I have not responded to a lot of your emails, but you have been so persistent. You see, and you emailed me over, and I said, wow, this guy, he doesn't give up. But you know what? There's something that has to be said about that. There's something within you that is powerful. Gravity. It takes character. There's something within you that's going to say, okay, this guy, he hasn't responded to me to these emails in a long time. I'll keep sending them to him, but I'm going to keep sending them to him. That's gravity within you. And guess what? Here I am now inside of your gravity. Does that have anything to do with the law of attraction? No, it has to do with you putting in the work, sending me all these emails, and here I am.
Yeah, that's how I got most. I know you listen to Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins and Les Brown, and I know because I listen to all of your. I look up to you actually, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make this happen. I believe in his mission, and I gotta because there's so many people look down on me because I don't chase girls, and they say like this, but I was telling myself, because back then in 2013 or 2011. I had my heart broken from an ex, and when I liked the girl, I felt hurt because I don't want to feel hurt again. So, and I listened to you because I was spiritually awakened with Ralph Smart, and I was like, wow, these guys are speaking the truth, and that's what grabbed me. I've been trying to live your principle. It's really hard because what can we do about that when a lot of guys are chasing girls and they look at you and say, wow, this guy's not chasing girls. So what can you do about that?
Well, the thing is that I'll have, there's a common saying, the proof is always in the pudding. It makes no sense to continue to do something if it continues to bring you failure. And see, so the fact that men are continuously chasing girls proves that they are perpetually failing, because you don't have to continue to chase once you have already found. So what I'm saying is that it makes no sense. If it doesn't work, then there's no reason for any man or any woman for that matter to continue to do what does not work. The difference, I think, is that a lot of us, we've been trained to always be on the pursuit, to be on the prowl like predators. And we're going to somehow find this girl or this woman, and we're going to be able to establish a relationship with them. And some men, it's not even about relationships. Some men, it's simply about sexual gratification, but it never leads to anything of substance. So in my opinion, it makes no sense to continue to chase. And even if those men criticize another man for not chasing, well, the truth is that those men who are chasing are failures. So what's the point in criticizing someone who's not failing when you're failing yourself? You see what I'm saying? So what I always recommend for men to do is don't chase. I wasn't chasing. I wasn't looking for any woman when I met my wife. It didn't. And it's true. It does. In most cases, it's not like people are really looking when it happens. What really makes the difference is for people to be prepared for it once it arrives, because it's going to happen. It can happen today. It can happen tomorrow. Whether you chase or not, it can happen today or it can happen tomorrow. The difference is that if you chase, that means you have a particular type of predatory mentality, and that predatory mentality does not allow you to be prepared for when a positive relationship is right there. See, however, if you take the time to work on yourself, to heal yourself, deal with any negative emotions that you have associated with being hurt in past relationships, take some time off, heal. That's preparing for the positive relationship that can happen today, that can happen tomorrow, can happen in a week, can happen in a month, it's going to happen a year from now. It's going to happen eventually. But the real question is, are you prepared? Chasing does not mean that a person is prepared. Chasing means that a person is desperate. And I'll say inside the video series, how to prepare for a positive relationship with a woman. The worst thing that any man can do, or woman for that matter, is to choose a partner out of desperation. It's much wiser, if you will, to be patient and prepare yourself, work on yourself, develop internal gravity, because that is what's going to make a difference. Because once you are in a relationship, being prepared for that relationship is what is ultimately going to determine whether or not that relationship is going to be successful or not. So what I'm saying to you, young brother, is don't worry about people who may criticize you for not doing what they're doing, especially if they're failing in the first place.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And I would like to prepare for, well, what when we get into a relationship, how can we avoid getting a divorce or like that negative space or when we get to that stage?
How can we avoid failing in relationships?
No, no. How can we avoid getting a divorce or like what can we do at that stage? You know, like if
Oh,
someone have that type of failure or like
yes.
divorce,
Yes,
so they
well,
can navigate.
let me say two things. One is that in some cases in relationships or even in a marriage, a divorce isn't necessarily a bad thing per se. And that's to say that in some cases, it's to both people's benefit, the man and the woman, to divorce. And in some cases, even for their children, it's to their benefit for them to be divorced. It's not ideal. There's going to be a lot of pain and suffering as a consequence, but to stay in a negative, toxic marriage indefinitely, that's not wise either. You're going to suffer either way. So on one hand, what I'm saying is that a divorce isn't necessarily a form of failure. It can actually be a form of success, depending on whether or not the relationship or the marriage is salvageable, meaning things can be worked on and things can be worked through so that the relationship can actually become positive and the marriage can be positive. However, in some instances, there are things that people can do in order to get the marriage back on track. There are things, I always recommend for people to get professional help. Oftentimes what people tend not to do is get the professional help that they need in terms of their marriage counseling, relationship counseling, what have you. And they wait too long and they put it off to the point wherein it gets too far. The damage that has occurred inside of the marriage or in the relationship has gone to such an extreme that there's no way of salvaging the marriage or saving the marriage or the relationship. So what I would recommend is that ultimately, people get the help if you need the help, and get it as soon as possible. And then, of course, number two, recognize that if divorce is the best option, then there's nothing wrong with that. But the other thing is this, that there are things that people can do in advance of even getting into a relationship to avoid being in a situation later on down the line wherein they feel like they need to divorce their partner. In other words, that if people come into a relationship in the first place and come into the marriage in the first place prepared, and if they are genuinely good people, in other words, that they don't lie, cheat, or steal, they don't manipulate, they're understanding of each other, they're kind to each other, they have a collective goal. There's things that people can do in advance of even getting married that will facilitate a happy marriage long term, wherein divorce is not even an option. So this ought to say that that's the part of the preparation process you can prepare. But again, if you're in a situation where a divorce or even exiting a relationship is the best option, there's nothing wrong with that, because it's better to suffer in the short term, after you divorce, than to suffer long term by staying in a toxic marriage indefinitely.
Right. Thank you so much. And I would like to know, because I know that you have a really positive family outlook, and you always talk about positive stuff, and how you raise your kid to be good kids.
Yeah, well, a lot of love. I think love is the answer. Love is the answer. So many of us, we were not necessarily raised in households that were filled with love. I wasn't raised in a household that was filled with love. It was an abusive household. My father was an alcoholic, a drug addict. At a certain point, he was on crack. He was abusive to us as children. He was abusive to my mother, physically abusive, emotionally abusive, verbally abusive. And it has had a long-standing effect on me and my siblings. And one of the things I recognized at an early age was I told myself I was not going to have my children being raised in that type of a situation. And I recognized early on that the answer was for me to refine myself and work on myself as a man to where I can open my heart up again, so that by the time I had children, I would be able to love them properly. And there's so many different ways to express love for your children. Affection, giving them hugs, giving them kisses, picking them up, being there, being there present for the birth. I actually delivered my last 3 children myself, my wife and I at home. We did home birth, and I delivered my last 3 children at home. That too is an act of love. The first 2 we did at a birthing center. Being supportive of their mother during pregnancy, after postpartum. That's an act of love. Making sure that they have food to eat. I mean, stuff like this. This is all relevant because ultimately love is the answer. There's things that I'm doing now. I picked up a full-time job and I'm working as mentioned. Haven't worked a regular job in over a decade. I've been running online businesses. But I get out here and I work hard, and it makes me tired. It's physical labor, manual labor, but it's necessary. It's an act of love on my part, an act of sacrifice as my children's father. I come home, I'm tired, and my feet still ache from last week. But the point is that all of this all that I do and all that I attempt to do and all that my wife has done and continues to do, it's really about providing our children with love. And what we found is, it's kind of like a great experiment. What we found is that if you are willing to love your children and continue to love your children, and not only love them, because love is levels. You love on different levels as you grow. And as you deal in the scope of love, you learn that love is the different levels and the different levels of love. And the idea is that even with your children, you want to love and love at higher levels over time. What we found is that if you do love your children, you provide them with love and care and affection and, all of those good things, that they will be good. And what I mean by good was that they will grow into wholesome human beings. They will not only will they intellectually grow, but they will be accustomed to experiencing love. They'll be accustomed to giving love and receiving love. And I think that makes a huge difference. It's going to make a huge difference in their lives for sure. But I can only imagine that if enough of us did this on the planet, that we would have a whole generation of young people growing up who will be raised in environments that facilitated love, and they would have all this experience of being loved, and therefore they will have no option but to love others. The world would be a much more pleasant, happier, and loving place. So this ought to say that it all comes back to love, our ability to love each other, my wife and I, but ultimately to funnel that love onto our children and bless them with that. And then we have a dog and a cat too, and we give them love too.
Thank you so much for that. What does success look like to you?
Success to me at this point in my life is being able to provide for my family more materially. This is the area that I do not feel I've done a good job at. All of the areas that, I'm fairly happy with. Being a loving father, being a dedicated husband, keeping my family safe, keeping them protected physically, keeping their minds protected from negative media programming, in particular with my children. Developing positive relationships with my children in and of itself. I have very positive relationships and raising my sons to be men. All of these types of things, raising my daughters in such a way to where they recognize that they do not have to settle for any man ever treating them poorly. I make a point to treat them with the utmost amount of respect and care, because I want them to recognize that is something that they deserve in their life later on when they come of age and they, are in a relationship. All these different levels. As a man, I've done a wonderful job, and I'm thankful. It's taken work, but the financial piece is the area in my life that has been a struggle from the time I can remember. I grew up poor, and there's a poverty consciousness that goes along with that, and it's a struggle to get over those mindsets. So I would say for me, I've been successful in all these other areas. If there's an area that I would like more success in, and not for myself but for my family, that would be more financial success, because I think I can be even better service to my family if I had more resources, financial resources, to do more things for my family. And that's precisely why I took this full-time job, and I'm taking as much overtime as possible.
Thank you so much. Before we let you go, why do girls, I've seen a lot with people who say they can't find any good men. Why is that?
Limited mentality. That's one of the issues when we talk about refining one's thoughts when it comes to relationships. I mean, for anyone to say, I can't find a good man or I can't find a good woman, this is an issue. It's a mental issue. And we all have mental issues to some degree. In other words, if we have a limited mentality about what we perceive to be possible, then we will say things like, there are no good men out there, or there are no good women out there, or I can't find a good man, or I can't find a good woman. But the truth is that you can. But even deeper still, why try to find them? The orientation is incorrect. The idea is to refine yourself and become the best man that you can be and the best woman that you can be, to develop the internal gravity that you need, to where you don't even have to go and look and find. They'll begin to circulate around you in your gravity, and then you can just choose and pick the best option for you. But again, we won't even get to that point where we recognize that we have to do some internal work if we have the mindset that is so limited, where we say things, I can't find. No, you can, but it's not even about finding. It's about finding the greater you. What can you do to refine yourself to become a greater woman or to become a greater man? There are plenty of good men out there that are available. There are plenty of good women out there who, and I said in the video series, how to prepare for a positive relationship with a woman. There are literally, you have hundreds of millions of options out there as a man. And as a woman, you have hundreds of millions of options out there. So you can't find, no, it's not, that's not an accurate statement to say you can't find one. I think more importantly, to recognize that you have to have an expansive mentality about what's possible. And you should be able to say to yourself, you know, yeah, there's hundreds of millions of options out there. All I have to do is prepare for those, one of those options. It only takes one. You know, it's a profound way of looking at things. Again, the expansion of your mentality when it comes to relationships in which you perceive to be possible, to be able to say there's hundreds of millions of options out there and it only takes one. But the real question is, am I prepared? You see, trying to find one, going out on the prowl, being a predator, that's not the appropriate orientation. Looking within, recognizing that there's things that you have to do within yourself to be prepared. You have to refine your thoughts, your words, your emotions, and your actions day by day. Become a better woman, become a better man, be prepared for positive relationship. That's the correct orientation. And see, if you focus on yourself and refining yourself, you'll begin to notice that all of the options begin to present themselves to you instantaneously. And then you can just choose the best option for you. That's a whole different way of looking at it.
No, okay, thank you. And I would like to ask, where do you get all these knowledge and idea from? You read books, or where you learn all these from?
That's an interesting question. You know what I will say is that a lot of it is from personal experience, but the other thing is that I'm a thinker. I think a lot, you know, and I you know, I have a belief that ultimately our ability to think is our closest connection to what we consider to be spirituality. Just very quickly, you know, our thoughts, where are they exactly? Are our thoughts things? I mean, in other words, are they physical, tangible things? No. They can become physically or tangible once we actually put in some work, some physical action. So in other words, what we consider to be the physical domain is one thing, and that's what we see, and that's what we can create. But someone can create a pencil, but in their mind, or a pen, but in their mind, they have to imagine it in their mind in the first place. But that imagination doesn't necessarily mean that it's real per se. But the fact that they're able to think about it, and it's not real, but it still exists within their mind, there's something spiritual about that, because it's not quite tangible yet until they actually create it. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I would say that for a person to think critically, to think and to engage in an appropriate analysis, what I like to call proper intellectual process, I think that there's something spiritual about that too, because you can actually gain insights into what you're seeing in the world by thinking critically about it, and really get to the deeper meanings. And even within your mind, it begins to shape how you imagine things, what you perceive to be possible, what you perceive to be a potentiality that you didn't necessarily perceive to exist before. So part of what I'm saying is that creativity, in essence, our ability to create things, starts in the mind in the first place. But if I ask a person, where's your mind? They may localize it with up here somewhere, but the truth is that you can take your mind anywhere at any given time. Right now, I can take my mind to the moon, you know, in my imagination, and I'm at the moon right now. Then I can come back and I'm talking here with you. Well, there's something to be said about that. In other words, your imagination or your mind is not necessarily tied to the physical realm per se. You can be anywhere at any given time. There's something spiritual about that. So what I'm saying is that even our ability to think critically, to analyze things, that opens up avenues of creativity. And I think that for me, to a great degree, it has opened up a lot of avenues of creativity that allows me to write books, to do documentaries, to compose music, and all the other different things. I think it comes down, for me, creatively, the creative process ultimately comes down to my thinking process and how I think. And again, philosophically speaking, my approach to spirituality is that spirituality is the ability to materialize and manifest happiness at will. But part of materializing and manifesting happiness at will is to have the right mindset. And it always comes back to this, your mind. So all I'm saying here is, in a nutshell, without being you know, too complex, I think I've kind of overstated it, is that even our ability to be happy in life comes down to our mindset, how we think about things. And if we think about things in a particular type of a way, then we can maximize on the probability of actually experiencing happiness in our life. And we can also maximize on our potential to be creative and create things. And so for me, I would say that to be able to think, and to be able to think critically and think deeply, and also think in silence and not really say much. You know, in most instances, I'm very quiet and I sit back and I think about things. It has made a huge difference in terms of my creative potential, and it continues to grow over time.
Well, thank you so much. I would like to say, because you talk about spirituality a lot in your video, you know, I've been trying to help inspire people to live their dream, and I'm doing the same as I'm speaking. This is actually my dream. How can we use spirituality and practicality to be able to, because people get, I know I'm not trying to offend anyone. I just want to be able to, because we're trying to live a better life. How can we use spirituality together as practicality to be able to maximize our potential, our success in life.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and so many people aren't.
Yeah, in the first place, I think people have to define what spirituality is to them personally. I don't necessarily perceive spirituality to be one thing for everybody. It just doesn't work that way. In my own personal journey, I've recognized that spirituality has meant different things to me over the decades. And even if within my own life it has meant different things, how can I say that spirituality means one thing for everybody? It didn't even mean one thing for me. So I think it's important. And that's part of the thinking process, that people have to think and be very clear intellectually about what does spirituality mean to you. And what I found, and again, to me, it's simply the ability to materialize and manifest happiness at will. Things haven't been going all that well for me. And, and I'm going to say something else to you, and this may even sound spiritual, but there was something where I recognized, because you have been sending me so many emails and I've been ignoring you, but then I responded to a couple of it, but then I started ignoring you. And there was something in me that said, that wasn't right. It's not right to do that. Here's a young brother, and he's reaching out and he keeps sending me these emails. And there was something within me, and things haven't been going well for me. Something said, no, do this interview, because it's the right thing to do. He's putting out this energy to contact you. It's a form of gravity. He has gravity. For him to be this persistent and keep doing this, it says something about his character as a young man. You have to respect that. Do this interview. Something else that said, when you do this interview, things are going to open up for you. And things are going to get better, the things you've been struggling with lately. And it makes me happier. Talking with you makes me happier. You see? So this too is spiritual, because ultimately it's a power to materialize and manifest happiness at will. You see? Okay, so I'm saying that to say that even us talking, it brings happiness, and there's going to be people who actually see this, and they're going to be able to materialize and manifest happiness at will. Well, that's spirituality to me. So what I'm saying is that each and every one of us, you have to define what spirituality means to you, and then once you define it, then you pursue whatever that is. The challenge is, and I think the problem for most people is, that they don't necessarily have a clear definition for themselves, maybe someone else's definition, but a clear definition that fits their own personal experience or their own personal journey. And then what tends to happen is, whatever someone else says is spiritual, the person pursues that, and they pursue it, but it doesn't bring them happiness. They become more frustrated because they're not getting the types of results that they thought that they were promised, or they thought that they would get. And then after that doesn't work out, there's something else that's presented to them as something to pursue spiritually, and so they pursue that. And then everything that was promised by pursuing that doesn't materialize and manifest. It doesn't materialize or manifest happiness at will, and they get frustrated with that. And the more and more they do these, and they keep doing this, I call it the spiritual hamster wheel. They just run on this hamster wheel over and over again, and the more frustrated they get, the more unhappy they get. And now we totally defeat the purpose of why we're even here on the planet. We're not here on the planet to pursue spirituality based upon other people's definitions that make us frustrated. That's not why we're here. No one's here to be frustrated. We're here to find happiness. You see, and in my opinion, that is really what this human journey is about for all of us, even for those of us who've had traumatizing experiences, about overcoming our childhood traumas and realizing happiness in our lives and creating something beautiful in our lives. But we're not going to do that if we're continuously pursuing other people's definition of what spirituality is, other people's definition of what happiness is. Here's another one: other people's definition of what success is supposed to be for you. Other people's definition of how you should look, or how you should speak, or how you should dress, or how you should behave. You see, all that creates in people's lives is more and more frustration, more and more disappointment, and ultimately more and more sadness. And we're not here to live a sad life. We're here to find happiness and share happiness with others. So what I'm saying is that when it comes to spirituality, in the first place, you must define it for what it is to you. What does that mean to you? And you have to really think about that. And you can't just accept what someone else may say. You need to activate your chakra, and somehow you become more spiritual. I can't tell you how many people I've seen go on that, and then they get on the spiritual hamster wheel. They keep running and they become frustrated. I'm not getting the result. I'm not developing psychic abilities. All these types of things that are promised to them, and it makes them unhappy. Okay, well then after that, you need to go and do this other spiritual practice. You need to meditate, and you need to do it this way, because this is the only way. This is the way that you have to do. And they start doing that, and then they get frustrated because they're not getting the types of results. But it's all based upon what someone else is telling them they need to do. You need to do yoga, and you need to do these particular poses at this particular time. You got to recite these particular mantras, and they have to be in this particular tone. And then people engage in that, they can become frustrated because they're not getting the types of results. But the truth is, they don't even know what spirituality means to them in the first place. So now they're on this hamster wheel, more frustration, more disappointment, and then ultimately more unhappiness. That's not how we're meant to live our lives. And that, in my opinion, that's not what spirituality is about. Spirituality is about you finding what it means to you to create. How is it? What's the best means for you to create happiness in your life? In my opinion, that's the simplest definition. What is that? What does it mean to you to create happiness in your life? And I think that if more people pursued happiness as opposed to the symbols of what they perceive or what other people tell them is happiness, I think people will be happier. In other words, I'm sorry. In other words, most people pursue the symbols of happiness as opposed to pursuing happiness itself. So if yoga is the symbol of happiness, they pursue yoga, but they become frustrated and they become unhappy. Many people. If activating your chakra or your third eye, therefore somehow becomes a symbol of happiness. If you do this, you're going to find bliss and happiness. You're going to be enlightened. And they pursue that. But that's not what happiness is. There's people who aren't even participating in any of those types of behaviors, and they're perfectly happy. You see, but people, they misplace the symbol of happiness. They use that as what they focus on as opposed to happiness itself. What I'm saying is that if yoga is the thing for you that brings you happiness, pursue that. If activating your third eye, quote unquote, is what is going to bring you happiness, and you know that to be true, then pursue that. But don't pursue those things simply because someone tells you to, or because someone tells you that it's going to make you more spiritual. Don't do that. What you always do is you ask yourself, what is the most efficient and effective way to experience happiness in my life? And whatever that thing is, or those things are, that's what you pursue. Because ultimately, those are the things that's going to lead you to happiness. And happiness is the goal.
Yes, so many people are like the same thing that I've been trying to direct people in the good direction. Like you said, I agree with you with what success means to you is different from me, and what happiness means to me is different from you, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing as the law of attraction. People put this label and they only study the law of attraction, which make me kind of like upset, because there are things that you need to work on, like communication and understanding people. You know, selling or marketing, whatever that is, relationship, you know, but they don't go, they always talk about the law of vibration, but they never talk about, you're dealing with people, and problems come also with people, right? And they don't know how to deal with that, you know, and it kind of makes me upset a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to ask, where can we find you and where we can get to know you better?
Yeah, well, YouTube, of course. I'm on YouTube, Lenon Honor Films. And I'm also on Facebook under Lenon Honor. I have a couple of Facebook pages, and I'm on Twitter. My website is lenonhonor.com. And then, of course, my email is lenonhonor@yahoo.com. But, you know, if anyone interested in any of my work, you can always head on over to my website, lenonhonor.com, or on YouTube, Lenon Honor Films. And under most of my videos, I have links below where you can get more information, or, you know, links to you know, my website, or even to my documentary, Beyond Gangster Blackface. All that information will be there on YouTube.
You always talk about mind control. Mm-hmm. What is mind control? Can you tell that to people?
Yes. So simply put, is a manipulative technique to limit a person's ability to think beyond a particular paradigm. So in other words, one of the aspects of mind control that I like to really focus on is what I call fear-based mind control. Because fear is a construct. Fear can limit people. Fear, ultimately, there are people who live in a state of perpetual fear. And you can't really think critically about things when you're living in a state of perpetual fear, simply because you are in survival mode. In other words, there's the flight or fight instinct. And for a lot of people, they're either fighting, even if it's just in their mind, or they're trying to find ways to flee. They're trying to survive. So the notion of really sitting down and being calm and being at peace and really thinking deeply about things, it becomes untenable. In other words, it's not something that people will tend to do, because they're really scattered just trying to survive, because they're always in a state of fear. And so one of the things that I've noticed, and this is very clear to me, like as an example in the news, is oftentimes the stories that are reported on strike a lot of fear in people. You know, it's fear-based programming. You know, it's about death, destruction, war, gore, you know, things that are heinous. That's a form of mind control, because it puts people in a mental state wherein they experience different levels of fear, and fear compromises the intellectual process. So whenever you have the compromisation of the person's intellect or intellectual process, being able to think rationally or critically, you're basically controlling their mind. You're limiting their mind's ability to think beyond a particular paradigm. And I will tell you, brother, there are a lot of us, and I lived in this paradigm for a long time, we're living in the paradigm of fear within our mind. And as a consequence, we're unable to think deeply about things because we're simply in survival mode. We're trying to survive. All the stories in the news, negative, disrupts happiness in people's lives. In some cases, it makes people depressed. Well, that's mind control. Because if you didn't watch those things, you would have a more expansive view about the world. You would have a more positive view about the world, a more positive view about yourself, a more positive view about other people, and therefore you'll be happier. You see, so mind control in a nutshell is a manipulative technique that is used, and it's used in many different forms, but in particular mass media, to be able to constrict and restrict the person's mental faculties to where a person can't think beyond a limiting paradigm. And for a lot of us, that limiting paradigm is simply fear itself.
Yes, thank you so much. I agree with what you said. I've been trying to get that message out there, and I think also the education is also a form of mind control.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. But okay, thank you so much for taking the time to the interview, and I hope that everything will go well with you. And I know that you're very busy. Subscribe to my channel, like the video, and we'll talk next time. Bye bye.
All right.
Thank you.